Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for hopping on. So hopefully I can kind of help explain what's going on with this. So we're going to talk about movement as medicine and all exercise in general. But I want to look a little bit more at high intensity interval training. So we'll get to that in like the second part of this presentation. Really kind of, it's a technique of exercise that's really helpful if you're short on time. And so we'll kind of explain that too. But just in general, like finding ways that we can move more and exercise more when we're short on time, which is really one of the biggest barriers I think most of us face. Um, all right, so just to start out, um, hopefully none of this is like super surprising to you, but a few years back, Journal of American Medical Association did a study, and they looked at between 2000 and 2018, 35 big drug companies received a combined revenue of $11.5 trillion, trillion with a T. So with a gross profit of $8.6 trillion, and these drug companies are making a lot of money. But what if there was one pill that could help you lose weight, strengthen muscles, increase your energy, reduce your risk for chronic conditions, help improve your skin, help improve sleep, reduce pain, boost your sex drive, improve memory and brain health, and feel happier? Would you take it if it were just down to one pill? And it's not a pill, which for some of us, that's even better news because we don't want to take as many medications. It's exercise. And it's not just exercise like, let me go jog for 30 minutes straight. It's any type of movement and activity in 2-minute bouts can provide those meaningful health results. So it's just, if you get nothing else out of today's presentation, start somewhere and just move. Hopefully, if nothing else, just taking that away, starting somewhere, start where you are, just move. But just to kind of dive into this a little bit more, the CDC estimates that eliminating 3 risk factors can help improve our health significantly. Poor diet, physical activity, and smoking. So if we eliminate these 3 risk factors, that would prevent 80% of heart disease and stroke, 80% of type 2 diabetes, and 40% of cancer. That is pretty significant in just 3 things that we can do. And that's not even a pill or anything to do that. So exercise, if we're looking at what this defined by exercise, it's activity that is purposeful, planned, structured, repetitive, and a challenge to the body. It aims to improve or maintain areas of physical fitness, including heart health and muscular strength. On the flip side, if we're looking at physical activity, this is most of our activities throughout the day, other than sitting or laying down. Running errands, playing with pets, some types of recreation, fidgeting if you're sitting at your desk, twitching your foot, tapping your hands, moving around on the keyboard, just not sitting still. So what good does this do? Well, movement, in general, just movement helps with blood pressure. It can help the heart pump more blood with less effort, reducing our overall blood pressure. It helps lower our glucose levels and boosts our body's sensitivity to its own insulin that it produces. So it's lowering our risk of diabetes. It helps with weight management because it's burning more calories, reducing body weight, and promoting fat loss, especially in the abdomen. It improves mood. It reduces anxiety, improves self-image, so really helping with depression. And then dementia. One of the biggest things that you can do to reduce your risk of dementia is staying physically active. Overweight and obesity, so 2-minute walking bouts every 20 minutes helps reduce your blood glucose by 24% and helps improve your insulin response by 30%. This comes down to what we call non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically, this is simply put is just movement. It's physical activities other than exercise. So just movement throughout the day. Activities of daily living, fidgeting, muscle contraction, maintaining posture. So this goes even to the point of people that overeat and have effective activation of need. They're fidgeting, twitching, all of those things. They dissipate excess energy, so it's not available as storage for fat. But some of the biggest risk factors for diabetes, obesity, is independent of exercise levels, independent of how much you exercise throughout the day, is how much we're sitting, especially if we're sitting watching TV for long periods of time. even light to moderate activities associated with a substantially lower risk if we're just moving throughout the day. So at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're moving throughout the day to help maintain benefits as much as we possibly can. But diabetes, when we're looking at diabetes and movement and interrupting our sitting often, just light walking, simple resistance activities that can help balance blood sugars after a meal, reduce your resting blood pressure, improve your overnight glucose concentrations following the following morning. So that fasting blood sugar, when you take that in the morning, that will be lower. Heart health, if you don't have 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, if you spread it out, maybe 5-minute bursts, 10-minute bursts here or there, it has a big impact on accumulated bouts of exercise. So it helps with reducing body mass, helps with LDL cholesterol, reduces triglyceride concentrations, improves blood pressure, which all helps improve heart health. Depression, one review found that exercise and physical activity had beneficial effects on those with depression symptoms and comparable treatments to those with antidepressant treatments. During the COVID, a lot of adolescents had issues with stress and anxiety and depression. Staying physically active helped counteract that. It helped improve senses of well-being, helped improve vitality and perceived health. So big takeaway on this one, cognition and movement. The more we increase our leisure time physical activity, it lowers our risk of dementia, it lowers our risk of Alzheimer's disease. So physical activity improves cognition, independent functioning, it improves dementia outcomes, psychological health and dementia. So looking at a study that followed 800 women for 44 years, physical activity was associated with a decreased risk of mixed dementia and dementia with cerebrovascular disease. So you're improving the dementia and the mental health outcomes, but you're also improving cardiovascular outcomes. So it's a twofer. It's like you have basically one pill that's taking care of two separate conditions. The benefits are larger with men and overweight individuals, but the big takeaway too is it's never too late. So these are usually older individuals that have dementia and cognitive issues, but they're still getting benefits from the activity, even that late point in time. There's been other studies that shows strength gains in people that are 90 years old or older. It is never too late. So this is all of the background. We know we're supposed to be active. The American College of Sports Medicine recommends at least 150 minutes of moderate activity per week and 75 minutes of vigorous activity per week. We're going to look through all the recommendations here in a second, but just kind of stay with me because there's a reason we're not doing some of this stuff. There's a reason why we know what we should do. We see the benefit, and sometimes that can help increase our motivation. But we'll look at like some more practical ways of how can we make it happen. So cardiovascular exercise is aimed at strengthening the heart. As little as 15 minutes per day can help support heart health. But this is including your walking, jogging, biking, running, swimming, stair stepping, rowing, any of those things. Strength training is important because it helps build our muscle mass. It helps make it so that we're going to increase our metabolism, and it helps with making sure that we're having enough strength so that hopefully as we're getting older, we're more stable, our balance is better, we're maintaining that muscle mass. It also helps pull on our bones and helps with preventing osteoporosis. American College of Sports Medicine recommends training all major muscle groups at least twice per week with 8 to 12 repetitions with 8 to 10 different exercises. So 8 to 10 different exercises, each of those exercises you're doing 8 to 12 times. Flexibility training helps the muscles stay flexible, strong, prevents injury, avoids joint or muscle injury. It is recommended at least 2 to 3 times per week. Daily is the most effective way to do it, especially if you're like got some tight joints that you're trying to fight off here. Flexibility exercises include stretching, yoga, tai chi, those kinds of things. So average American adult watches over 5 hours of television per day. I'm hoping that might be a surprising number. Some of us, it's even more. If you have your phone telling you and ratting you out each week, then you see how much screen time you have. I will admit I'm ashamed of mine some weeks, but putting your Netflix time to good use. Try stretching to help decrease muscle stiffness, increase your range of motion, improve posture, improve muscle tension. You can do those kinds of things while you're just sitting there watching TV. You can get up and take advantage of commercial breaks by going to walk. You could do some exercises during the commercial breaks. Maybe have a little foot bike in front of you while you're watching TV. Just finding some way to help move, even if you are having some relaxing time in front of a screen. So getting into some of this practical, how do we get started? We have what's called the FIT principle, and we have the recommendations. The recommendations are 150 minutes of activity per week. My guess is if you haven't been doing anything and you started going to 150 minutes per week, it might not go so well, depending on where you are. So the FIT principle is supposed to help guide us to make sure that you're working out safely and that it's matching your experience and your goals. So it stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. Frequency, how many times per week are you working out? Intensity, how hard you feel like you're working out. Time, how long. Type, the type kind of exercise. So for an example, if I'm starting to work out, I'm changing all of these variables at once. I'm now have a frequency that I'm working out. I am doing any level of activity, effort. I am going for a certain amount of time, and I have a specific type of exercise I'm doing. Now, the recommendation is based off of a moderate intensity. We'll look at more on that intensity in a second. But if you're going at a pretty high intensity and you're jogging for 30 minutes every day, and you decide, hey, I really want to try starting to swim, and you start going into lap swimming for 30 minutes at a pretty high intensity every day, my guess is your shoulders will hate you, and that might not go so well. You might end up injured. So sometimes you need to kind of play around. If you want to start incorporating intensity, higher intensity, maybe alternating days. So if this is something I see a lot of times is, hey, I've been walking for 20 minutes. I want to start walking for 45 minutes or 60 minutes. Well, do that for one day and then maybe bring it down a couple days and see how you feel, and then gradually build it up so that maybe you're doing one day at 30 minutes, one day at 60 minutes, another day at 45 minutes. It does not have to be every day at that same amount of time. Maybe you're switching to swimming. You want to try swimming. All right, well, let's bring down the intensity. Let's start out at a light pace of swimming. Maybe you're not going to swim quite as long, but you're going to kind of introduce yourself to it. And you might start out 1 to 2 days a week. So you can kind of make those adjustments as you go. Intensity is one of the big ways that we can make those adjustments. So there's a lot of different ways that you can calculate intensity. Some people like heart rate, some people like, there's a different scale that you can go based off of heart rate. But this is a pretty good estimate, and this is one of my favorite ways, is our difficulty scale or our perceived exertion scale. Basically, asking yourself from moment to moment, how hard do you feel like you're working on a scale of 0 to 10? 0 being I'm sitting on my butt, 10 being I'm about to hurt myself. We do not ever want to be at a 0. We do not ever want to be at a 10, but trying to find that that middle ground. So moderate intensity is going to be somewhere between 4 to 7. That high intensity is going to be that 8 to 9, even to that 10. We don't necessarily want to get to that 10 though. Low intensity, you can carry on a conversation all day. So it's another way to think about it. You can have a conversation, you're walking, you're chatting, you can do this all day, no problem. This might be different depending on different fitness levels. Like if you have seen some 90-year-old ladies with some COPD, they have issues breathing. That low casual walking is going to be pretty high intensity for them. Moderate intensity gets more difficult. So it's more you can talk, you can have a conversation, but it's short sentences, short and sweet. Don't try to carry on long conversations. Vigorous, high intensity, basically don't talk to me. I'm just focusing on breathing right now. That's all I can do. So that's kind of the heart behind intensity. So these are the different levels. This is how we set up our workout plan. Now we're going to get into barriers and solutions. How do we know what we're supposed to do. How do we do it? And so first step, acknowledging your barriers. And I want you to take a step back and really, really think about this, because sometimes it's like, I'm just lazy, or I just really need to do it. All right, why are you not doing it right now? And really take a moment to ask yourself that. Then create a plan of action. What are some solutions? What are some different things? What's going to be the thing that works the best? And then what's a backup plan in case that doesn't work? Maybe you see it doesn't work, right? If you didn't do it within 1 week, we'll talk about SMART goals, but how do we have a backup plan? So this is, feel free to throw it in the chat, but what's one reason that you don't exercise? Maybe it's time, maybe you just don't like exercising, you don't like exercise, not sure what to do, worried you're going to get hurt, lack of motivation, lack of incentive, too tired, maybe it's something else. Don't like sweating. Yep, that's a big one. Injuries is a huge one. All of the above, yes. Too tired, difficult to find time in busy schedule, yep. Lack of motivation. All right, we're gonna keep going here. So there's lots of different things. These are just general ones. Life can make it difficult. We'll dive into more specifics here, but life can make it difficult to get in the habit. Sometimes that barrier is just like you get kind of bored of the same thing, so lack of variety. But for regular activity be our priority, we need to find ways to kind of mentally get past that. So there's always the drawbacks and then the benefits to doing anything. And if we're not going to do something, then the cost outweighs the benefits. So how can we kind of tip the scale to make the benefits outweigh the costs when it comes to exercise, to moving more? So common excuses, common reasons: travel, weather, cost, too tired, time, uncertainty, accountability. So finding ways, if it's a cost issue, maybe it's performing exercises at home, finding ways to stay active at home, walking groups with friends, just finding free opportunities in the area. If it's being too tired, maybe trying light activities, just something that you can do just to move a little bit more and gradually increase it. So a relaxing walk, yoga, stretching, light weights, doing something while you're just kind of sitting, even if it's arm exercises. If it's travel, finding ways to find a hotel with a gym, trying to find some safe walking trails around when you pick out where you're going to stay, or finding a place that you can go to that you can walk. Go sightseeing, bike, doing body weight exercises. If it's the weather, finding things that you can do inside. Maybe it's dancing, maybe it's YouTube videos, things like that. Time will come back to, but you can keep things in your car so that you can go straight to the gym. Uncertainty, so maybe it's just you're not sure if you're going to get hurt. If you feel like you need to, talk to your provider and make sure that you're safe and that you're going to start at a fitness level that's appropriate for you, and start slow. It's okay. Go based off of your difficulty level. If it starts to feel too hard, then back off a little bit and then gradually increase it. Gradually add in new exercises, even if it's one at a time. Accountability. My big thing with this is finding somebody who's about at the same level as you. So sometimes we can pick somebody who's an accountability partner and, they're, CrossFit specialists, they're running marathons every single day, and they're just so far ahead of us that we're trying to work out with them, and they've already gotten a half mile into the workout when you're just trying to start. So that might be somebody too far ahead. If somebody's too far behind you, as far as like you're ready to go, you're ready to start working out, ready to start moving more, and they're thinking about it, but they'd much rather, not do that, and they really don't want to, then you're probably not going to have them as a great accountability partner, because for anything that comes up, they're probably not going to want to do it. So making sure you have your list as far as why you want to do it, but also having somebody who's on the same page as you. Taking time to be outside is a big helpful for motivation. it has so many benefits just being outside in nature. It helps increasing natural light can change uh, sorry. Spending 20 minutes of connecting with nature can help lower stress hormones. So maybe it's taking activities outside, having activities, room with a view, having some window light, going to walk to somebody has a window. If you just want to say, hey, I just want to see the sun. Maybe it's just taking a quick walk outside to get some light, fresh air, and then come back inside. But even trying scavenger hunts, sidewalk chalk, board games, any way that you can to be outside, playing with kids outside or grandkids outside, just finding ways to, it's nice the weather's finally breaking to actually be outside and enjoy that nature. It's also associated with lower probabilities of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, asthma, hospitalization, mental illness, and ultimately lower mortality with living in that greener area. Spending 120 minutes a week in nature is also associated with good health and well-being. So taking that time outside can help with increasing motivation. Then we come to our time barrier. So this is one of those big things. All right, I've had this perception before, but anybody else think, oh, have the thought before of, oh, if I can only do 10 minutes of workout, it's really not worth it. If I've only got like 5 minutes, it's really not enough time to get a workout in. Anybody else have had those thoughts? Yep, I'm seeing some. Jamila's got there. So this is a story about Sir Roger Bannister. So this was back in the 1950s. And so this is kind of case in point. Back in the 50s, nobody thought that the mile could be run faster than 4 minutes. And typically thought to be impossible. Now, if you know any distance runners, most of them, they run close to 100 miles a week, if not over 100 miles a week. And they just thought this is not going to happen. And this, mind you, is a cinder track. So it's not even the tracks we have today. But no amount of training, it's just the unbeatable 4-minute mile barrier. You can't get past it. Usually you had high volume of training. So that 100 miles a week, you would take hours on hours of dedication, 2-a-day workouts. Then along comes Roger Bannister, who's a med student at the University of Oxford. And he, obviously, if he's a med student, didn't have a whole lot of time to work out or train. And he didn't really have the typical training regimen for that time. Could only train about 5 hours a week, which is really not much time for a distance runner at all at any point in time, not just back then. And he'd run really kind of strange workouts for the time. He would do 10 sets of 400-meter runs. So if you're doing the math, that's about 2.5-mile run total. He'd do 7 sets of 800-meter runs. So again, you're looking at like 3.5 miles. These are pretty short distances, much, much shorter than people would run. And so he was still in med school at the time, didn't have a whole lot of time, but then he finally broke the glass ceiling of running with a time of 3 minutes and 59 seconds, 59.4, and was the first person to do so. After him, a lot of people followed, but even still, the thing that probably changed the most was how we thought about training, how we thought about what you had to do and what you could do. And so longer or more workouts is not always better. It's not always better for performance. It's not always better for our health. It's not always better for just overall outcomes. So a lot of us don't have that kind of time to take hours and hours a week of training or exercising. So high intensity interval training is really to help kind of address some of that, but it's a different type of workout. And so it includes rounds of very high intensity, working out nearly as hard as you can, and then alternating that with a slower, short period of rest. So you can get similar or even better results to a longer workout, but the intensity during this is very, very vigorous. Usually you're using body weight for resistance, or just kind of your own body weight or your feet. So it doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but it can look a couple different ways. And we'll get into that. But what's the difference between HIIT versus moderate intensity? So moderate intensity, we saw that's that 5 to 7 range on that difficulty scale. So it's about 55 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. So kind of lining up with that. It increases the body's ability to use oxygen and become quickly the same thing each day though. High intensity interval training, you're looking at that 8 to 9 scale on that difficulty scale, so 80 to 85% of your maximum heart rate, you still get an increase in oxygen with the moderate intensity, but you actually get more of an increase in the body's ability to use oxygen than you do with moderate intensity exercise. And it tends to be more enjoyable just because there's more variety. It kind of you have to mentally engage in it, which typically helps people comply with it more. So total time for high intensity interval training is about 3 to 10 minutes of intense total work. It has the same amount, if not more of an impact than 45 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic work. So in 3 to 10 minutes, you can do about the same amount as you can do in 45 minutes. Now, when we talk about breaking up your moderate intensity into 3 10-minute bouts, that can still be this 5 to 7 range. But you're probably going to see more of an impact on your health and more of an impact on outcomes if you get to this 8 to 9 range. So looking at some of the health benefits, it's found to improve depression more so than moderate intensity exercise and people with major depression or bipolar disorders. So again, like looking back before, we still saw an improvement with moderate intensity, but there's more so an improvement with HIIT workouts. Greater reduction in cardiovascular risk factors than moderate intensity exercise, but especially if you're in cardiac rehab or you're recovering from a cardiac event, we might need to adjust your rest periods. You might need to adjust really how hard you feel like you're working, really watch that heart rate. So you really want to try to do that in a cardiac rehab setting with your provider's guidance. Hypertension, it's as effective or potentially more effective than moderate intensity exercise in reducing blood pressure and how efficiently we're using oxygen. We even get into pulmonary disease. So it helps improve aerobic endurance and shortness of breath in those with COPD. So for a population that already has issues breathing, that's pretty significant. The rest periods even allow like a little bit of a break for people with COPD, which helps to improve how much they're engaging in the workout. Diabetes. So just kind of a quick note, it should only be done in those that have well-controlled blood sugars. So if your blood sugars are not within the guidelines that your provider set or not less than that 7 A1C, talk to your provider. You don't want to do this with retinopathy related to diabetes, and you don't want to do it with neuropathy, especially if you have foot wounds or blisters, but talk to your provider. That's just kind of typical guidance. The reason being is we actually see with exercise, if you work out a very high intensity, immediately after your exercise, the blood sugars actually jump up. So if you already have high blood sugars and your blood sugars are not managed, and then you work out really, really hard, your blood sugars could go up more, which could be not so good at that moment. But for those that it is appropriate for, it has a more effective than moderate intensity exercise impact on reducing fasting blood sugar, A1C, fat mass, and insulin resistance in those with type 2 diabetes in the short and moderate term. It's pretty close in the longer term as far as moderate intensity, but it tends to do really well. It's shown promise in reducing fat mass and waist circumference despite no changes in body weight. So you could have 0 changes in your body weight, but have your waist circumference go down, improve body fat. So body composition is getting better, which means all of those health benefits are getting better. And again, you're having 40% less time spent on moderate and than spent on moderate intensity exercise. So you're saving 40% of your time by doing this kind of exercise. It may also be better at reducing more of that abdominal fat or the visceral fat. So really, when we look at health risk, it's really the fat around the organs that tends to be the biggest risk factor for a lot of health conditions, because that's, again, where all of our organs are. So if we can reduce how much fat's there, that we do better off. CDC and ACSM do recommend 300 minutes of moderate intensity exercise for weight loss typically. So the typical recommendation, again, is 150 minutes. But if you're looking for weight loss, they kind of bump it up to 300 minutes. So HIIT helps you reach that. So if you remember, it was 75 minutes for vigorous activity. So HIIT can help you get a lot of that exercise without having to necessarily spend all of that time. So again, some kind of safety precautions here. Talking to your provider before you start any new exercise routine, especially if you're out of shape. This is not something you necessarily want to jump into straight off the bat. It's something you kind of work yourself up to. And even once you're doing it, maybe doing it 1 to 2 days a week and kind of seeing how you feel because it takes time to recover. If you're recovering from an injury, probably not something that you want to hop into. If you're older, if you have medical conditions that need close monitoring, such as heart disease, uncontrolled heart rate, uncontrolled diabetes, retinopathy, talk to your provider. Make sure you check it off with them. And if you experience a drop in blood pressure or blood sugar before you start, or in the middle of the workout, just hold off. It's okay. Can come back to it another day when things are working more at the normal level. So these are different types of HIIT workouts, so high intensity workouts. So this is kind of like, how do we put this into practice? So Tabata is one type. It is 20 seconds of work followed by 10 seconds of recovery. So this could be repeated in 8 times in a row for a total of 4 minutes. Or it could be 2 sets of 2 minutes of Tabata with 1 minute recovery in between. So 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 2 minutes straight, take a 1 minute break, 20 minutes on, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for another 2 minutes would be that second one. But again, the goal of HIIT's to work out as hard as possible during that work interval and catch your breath during the rest interval. So you're going to go at a pretty slow pace in between if you're going to be working at all, and then go pretty hard during that working time. So for Tabata, like an example on this would be, you could go 20 seconds hard on a bike with the 10 seconds recovery, 8 times, or you could swim really hard for 20 seconds and then take a 10-second recovery. You could do it with rowing, but a lot of any type of cardio exercise. 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. You could do 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off, 30 seconds on, 60 seconds off. Usually our ratio is like that 1 to 1. So 1 point of time working, 1 point in time doing that same amount for rest. But you could also kind of mix it up. Could be body weight exercises with walking marches in between exercises. Usually this is 5 to 10 minutes of total working time. So with Tabata, we're seeing it's about 8 minutes, 4 to 8 minutes here. 30-30, we can see it's about 5 to 10 minutes. And then our last example is 30-20-10. So this is 1 minute intervals and same about 5 to 10 minute working time. But first 30 seconds, you're going at a pretty low intensity. Next 20 seconds at a moderate intensity. Last 10 seconds, high intensity. So this could be going from walk to jog to sprint, or walk to jog faster. It could be going from plank to push-ups to flat push-ups. So different ways of doing this. Making sure you get a rest break though. Prolonged activity with not getting enough rest increases your risk of injury. It helps prevent the growth and recovery. So in order to adapt to exercise, we actually have to give our body a break so that our body can repair and rebuild the muscle. So especially if you're doing HIIT workouts, we need to take that rest break. Make sure that your body is able to progress and improve while it's resting and recovering. So that being said, kind of going back to that one of the first slides we had, start somewhere, start small, start somewhere, start where you are. Every little bit's going to help. It could be 10-minute bounce, parking farther away, doing a lap around the grocery store before you start shopping, taking the stairs, standing while you're on the phone, fidgeting. Every 60 minutes, you get up for 3 minutes to walk. So just any way that you can move, but setting things in a smart way, setting goals in a smart way. So this is one of the things that can really help as far as setting up a plan that's going to help you stick to it in the long run. Is it specific? Do you know exactly what you're going to do, and do you know when you're going to accomplish it? Measurable. You kind of need to know where you are and whether or not you know when you've achieved your goals. So if we just have a goal of exercising more, we don't really know when we hit it. Is it attainable? For some of us, it is not going to be practical to start working out 150 minutes of activity per week. So what is attainable for you right now? Maybe it's just doing 2-minute bounce every hour. Sweet. Well, if you have an 8-hour workday, now you're getting an extra 16 minutes of activity that you didn't have. Is it relevant? Is it going to help you get to where you want to be? And then is it timely? On the note of relevant, if you're getting a gym membership but not going, it might not be relevant. So maybe not a great goal. But Is it timely? Do you know when you want to achieve your goal by? So if you want to start walking 20 seconds a day for 2 minutes a day, um, every hour each day, maybe start out with how many days per week, and then you know how many times, you know when you've done it. You want to do it by this point in time. And then getting rid of the all or nothing mentality. So a lot of times we get into a point of, if I haven't done it at all, if I'm not doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, then it doesn't count. When really any type of movement, anything that we're doing is going to help us get to that better health outcome. So start small. It's doing something's better than nothing. Find something you love, find activities that you enjoy, reward yourself, celebrate your progress, find ways that are healthy to kind of reward yourself for doing what you really set out to do. And remember why you started. Write it down, keep it visible, keep it somewhere that you can see. So maybe there's something you want to accomplish or what you want to do from today's webinar. Maybe it's just stretching while you're watching TV, finding an activity that you can do while you're having screen time, taking advantage of phone calls, getting up and walking, spending more time outside, scheduling in time for exercise, finding an accountability partner, just remembering why you started, keeping that in front of you, maybe doing that cost benefit analysis. Like, what are the benefits of me working out, and what are ways that I can kind of tip that scale? And then talking to your provider. You can always talk to me. We are Marathon Health now. If you can see our lovely Marathon, I think it's in that corner. So if you come to the doc, we're Marathon Health, but we're still the same doc. You can come talk to us. Feel happy. We're happy to help you any way we can. If you are on the City of Dayton's insurance, if not, talking to your own primary care provider. But with that said, any questions?